With the upcoming official hardcore servers, it is time to show some love to the priest class. Priests are one of the most underrepresented and most in-demand classes you will find in Classic WoW, and in hardcore, the demand for priests is simply going to go up even more. One question a lot of people ask themselves when choosing a class is, will my class be in demand, and will I be invited to raids? And by playing a priest, you can rest assured that you'll be wanted for endgame content, and your class is indeed in high demand. In this video, we'll go through the pros and cons of playing a priest in hardcore Classic WoW, who the class itself might be suitable for, and at the end we will also give the class a rating based on 3 important metrics: solo gameplay, group gameplay, and survivability. The aim with that rating is to give you an indicator on how good the class actually can be, and to help you make your decision on whether or not to play a priest a little bit easier. So let's talk about the priest. The priest is a very good choice for those of you looking to play a fairly good class with healing abilities. As a priest, your leveling process will be what I personally refer to as slow and steady. You do have some pumper possibilities, but for the most part, you'll be killing mobs one by one, and it provides a very chill leveling experience. Having access to the so-called wand spec for priests, you deal increased damage with wands, so you will basically be wanding down target. Use some mana to pump damage, then wand to finish off targets, while letting your mana regeneration start ticking, and then heal yourself when necessary. Once you unlock the new Mind Flay at the early level 40s, you can even start switching over to Shadow specialization to deal even more damage, but in return you will also use more mana to deal that damage. So you pretty much have a choice here. You can either pull more mobs and burn mana to burn them down quickly, and then go for a mana break, or you can pull the mobs one by one and still use wanding. The first one offers more pumpage and more risky gameplay, and in return also offers the possibility of slightly more efficiency, while killing mobs one by one is very safe, but also pretty slow. Now to begin with, as a priest you are pretty much chosen as a healer. You might level as Shadow, but at max level, Shadow is mostly a meme spec. At the end game, as a priest, if you truly want to be in high demand, that demand is from being a healer. But you also have to remember, official hardcore servers are servers where your character only has 1 life, which means you will need even more healers than before for raids, and even in regular Classic WoW, priests were already in pretty high demand, and for hardcore servers, this demand will be even better. Not only are priests very good healers, they are also very good at preventing death by mechanics that would otherwise kill you. What I mean by this is that any healer can heal a target after it has taken damage, but priests have a unique way of healing by preventing damage taken, through for example Power Word Shield, which can save you from a mechanic that would otherwise deal damage equals to 100% of your original health value. One of the very obvious upsides and pros of playing and leveling a priest in hardcore is having access to these healing abilities. When you only have 1 life, having a way to heal yourself is incredibly valuable. So, with all of this being said, let's take a look at some of the priest abilities that I personally think are worth highlighting for hardcore. Flash heal and self-healing abilities, helping you stay alive. Renew, don't really know how to say that one, but it's a heal over time that you can throw on yourself to generate some health either while in combat or right after combat, basically just a heal over time. Stamina buff, this one is actually quite important, giving you a bigger health pool which also allows you to take more damage before it becomes dangerous. Psychic Scream, useful if you need to fear mobs away from you in order to get away. Now make sure to use this ability extremely carefully, as feared mobs can run into more mobs and end up pulling more mobs on top of you, making a dangerous situation even more dangerous and causing absolute chaos. Personally, I would only use this ability when you have a complete control over your surroundings, or if you need to fear the mobs away from you in order to survive. You also have Shadow Form, useful if you plan to level up as a Shadow Priest, which a lot of people do after level 40. Shadow Form will increase your damage dealt and also reduce your damage taken, So this form is actually quite useful for survival, but you also cannot use holy spells while in shadow form. But you can simply macro holy spells to cancel out shadow form before casting, and it's GG easy. Mind Flay, the shadow damage over time in a drain channeling type of spell, as it's a 3-second channel ability. Now, while Mind Flaying, the mob will also be slowed down, allowing for some kiting possibilities. Shadow Word Pain, a damage over time ability, which further improves the priest's kiting ability, while also dealing damage while kiting. A key mechanic for priests in the early game is to use fence kiting to your advantage and burn down mobs through Shadow Word Pain, and if you care about speed leveling at all, that is the biggest tip that I can personally give you. Use fence kiting and ledge kiting to your advantage, pull 2 to 3 to 4 mobs in one pull, and then just jump back and forth and kite them around while burning them down with damage over time. You also get Shadow Weaving from a talent, increasing the shadow damage you deal to the target by 3% per stack, up to 5 stacks for 15% increased damage. You also have Spirit Tap, another passive ability from a talent, giving you 100% bonus to your spirit after killing a target that yields experience, so obviously pretty useful while leveling, and also allowing your mana to regenerate at 50% while casting. This is incredibly powerful while leveling as it compiles on top of itself, and the faster you kill mobs the more uptime you will have on mana regen, allowing for less downtime and more chain pulling. And also one specialization, another passive ability from a talent that is incredibly boring but also incredibly effective. This will increase your damage output by a lot, and it will also increase your damage output without using mana, which as a caster is pretty important to be able to deal as much damage as possible, while preserving your mana to spend it in times where you really need to. It is also worth highlighting Power Infusion and Vampiric Embrace, although they might not be the most insane abilities specifically for hardcore, they are indeed abilities that are important to the priest class and showcase how good the class can be, both solo and in group dynamics. All of these abilities should show that the priest actually has quite a few abilities at its disposal, that are quite strong for survival, but there are 2 main things that priests are lacking. Number 1, a hunter pet, or a pet companion basically, like a hunter or warlock that has a personal tank, and number 2, a movement speed increasing ability. On top of that, they also lack long-term slows for enemies outside of a channeled ability, and they also lack stun abilities. But with that being said, let's get into some ratings. For solo gameplay, priests get a 4 out of 5 stars. A good priest can put up this to 5 out of 5, and a bad priest would put this down to 2 out of 5. But for most priests, I think 4 out of 5 is roughly where you're going to be. Having access to healing abilities and decent damage output already by itself puts you in a pretty good situation, especially as long as you understand your class limits and don't try to be a mage pulling 20 mobs in one pull when you are in fact a priest. Priest leveling is actually incredibly chill, and it should never be dangerous or difficult unless you make a mistake that makes it scary. For group gameplay, priest jumps up to 5 out of 5 stars by being the best healer in the game, arguably, being able to prevent damage before it's being dealt, which can literally save lives from abilities that would otherwise result in certain death, and as a healer you will be in high demand all the time, and finding groups will be incredibly easy. For survival, back down to 4 out of 5, possibly 3, but I'm gonna give it 4. Having healing abilities is nice, and having Psychic Scream can definitely be helpful. Shadow Form reduces damage taken, but once again, you do lack movement speed increase, or a way to slow down mobs over time without channeling. You lack stuns, Paladin Bubble, or even a Hunter Pet or a Warlock Demon. You could even argue that for survival, Priest could be a 3 out of 5, but personally, I think considering all of the abilities that you do actually have access to, a 4 out of 5 star rating does sound fair. Now, if you've played a Priest in Hardcore Classic WoW, make sure to leave your tips and tricks in the comments down below.